After more than a decade of toiling without complaint, I was repaid with the word bastard. Grandfather's body was still warm, yet my relatives had already torn each other apart over a few measly silver coins. So it turns out that so-called familial affection is as fragile as a cicada's wing in the face of profit. On a rainy night in the morning hall, a Taoist in a green robe came through the rain and asked if I wanted to cultivate immortality. I knocked my head until it bled, begging only for a chance to live, since you regard me as mere weeds. Then from today, there will be no more Li Fei in this world, only an immortal that you can never hope to match. A mortal's life. Time passes in a flash. Even if you scheme with all your might, wealth and status are but for a moment. 100 years later, you're nothing but a handful of yellow earth, not even your name remembered. What's more, among the countless common folk, most are like me, ordinary people struggling in vain in an ocean of suffering. Only by seeking immortality and the Tao can one attain eternal life. My name is Li Fei. I was a member of the Li family of Qingshan village, or rather, I used to be. Rain had passed over the green mountains. Clouds drifted into the misty woods. The morning fog had not yet dissipated. I carried a heavy medicine basket on my back, descending step by step. With each step, the wound on my leg sent piercing pain through me. Those were the bruises from rolling down the ravine yesterday. I looked utterly exhausted, not from fatigue, but from the coldness in my heart. At the foot of the mountain, dozens of households stood in a scattered yet orderly fashion, with wisps of cooking smoke rising lazily. It should have been a cozy scene, but to my eyes, it was nothing but a cage. I walked through the narrow alley paved with blue stone, arriving at the familiar gate. With a creak, I pushed it open. I set down the medicine basket with an awkward motion, my body trembling slightly, as if I might collapse at any moment. In the kitchen, my stepmother Zhang Feng, barely older than me, caught sight of me through the window and burst into a shrill scolding that shattered the morning's peace. "You worthless girl, still have a nerve to come back? Why didn't the wolves in the mountains just carry you off?" I lowered my head and explained in a hoarse voice. "The herbs nearby have all been picked clean. I went farther this time and accidentally rolled into a ditch. I only woke up frozen this morning." She then noticed my tattered clothes and the bruises all over my face. Yet there was not a trace of sympathy, only deeper disgust. "Wasting such good clothes to make yourself look like this, and you still have a nerve to talk? Why aren't you in the kitchen starting the fire, waiting for me to serve you?" With that, she threw the firewood in her hand onto the ground, turned around with a look of disgust, and walked away. I remained silent, hobbling over to pick up the mud-soaked firewood. This was my daily life in the Li family, doing the heaviest work, eating the worst food, and enduring the harshest scoldings. Just then, a sound came from the bed. The short, sturdy old man, Li Hu, groped his way to sit up. He was the village pharmacist, mediocre in skill, but since he was the only one for miles around, he had managed to save up some money. He had married Zhang Feng, who was over a decade younger than him, and had a son named Liang, so you really came back. "You're quite lucky to be alive," Li Hu snorted coldly. "Even if it weren't a teenager, if I spent one night in the mountains, I probably wouldn't look human by the next day, either," Zhang Feng said sarcastically, pouting. "It's all your deadbeat father's fault. Doting on some stray he picked up instead of his own grandson, dragging it out for over a decade, wasting so much of the family's resources." Li Hu's face darkened. "You'd been married for years without getting pregnant. Adopting a kid was nothing. Divorcing you would have been perfectly justified. Who would have thought that right after the old man picked up Fei, you got pregnant?" Zhang Feng's momentum weakened a little, but she still refused to back down. "Humph. I, Li Hu, am no saint. Now that I have Xiaowang, I'm not going to raise another man's son. After the old man dies, let him fend for himself." Hearing these words, I clenched my fists tightly at my sides, my nails digging into my palms, but I felt no pain because my heart had already gone numb. Soon, Zhang Feng came out pulling her little brother Liang. Unlike Li Fei's shabbiness, Liang was spotless all over. Though he was thin and frail, his eyes carried the arrogance of a spoiled child. I skillfully placed 2 or 3 small dishes on the table, ladled out 3 bowls of plain congee, and set them before Dad, Mom, and my younger brother. When it was my turn, I only took a half bowl of thin congee, picked up some pickled vegetables, and cautiously walked toward the east room. Though I moved with difficulty, The hand protecting the bowl was as steady as a mountain, afraid of spilling a single drop. In the eastern room lay Grandpa Li Qing, frail and nearing his end. At 83, he was the only one in this family who had ever shown me warmth. A severe illness a few days ago had completely broken his aged body. "Grandpa, it's time to eat." I placed the thin porridge by the bedside, preparing to help him sit up. Grandpa struggled to lift his eyelids, shook his head, and said in broken breaths, "My clothes, they're torn. Change them." My heart ached, but I forced a smile. "It's fine. They can still be worn." "Grandpa, please eat first." Grandpa didn't respond. Instead, he closed his eyes. After a moment, he suddenly opened them, a glimmer of final vitality shining in them. Panting, he said, "Have them. Come here." A sense of foreboding washed over me. When the whole family stood before the bed, Grandpa struggled to sit up. Li Hu impatiently pulled over a broken stool and sat down. "Dad, just say what you have to say. Don't drag this out." Grandpa hunched over, coughing a few times, his eyes full of sorrow. "I know my own body well. Whether I go or not, it'll be in the next day or two. Now the Li family is fairly well off in the village. Xiao Fei works hard. Even a hired hand wouldn't be treated so poorly. Hua, I don't ask you to be perfectly fair." "Dad, that's unfair." Zhang Feng's eyebrows shot up, hands on hips. "So you're saying he survived on air all these years? Without this family, he'd have died in the alley long ago. Now he just does some odd jobs, and he can learn medicine from his father. How is that mistreating him?" I shuddered, my fists trembling even more. "Learn medicine? Father wouldn't even let me watch. Every day, he gives private lessons to my younger brother. And me? I'm just free labor." Liu said in a deep voice, "Dad, just rest easy. Don't worry about these things." Grandfather sighed, knowing further words were useless. He waved his hand wearily. "You all go out." Li Hu and Liang immediately turned and left. Zhang Feng lingered 2 steps behind, her eyes flickering. She closed the door as if casually. Only Grandfather and I remained in the room. "Xiao Fei, I'm old." The light in Grandfather's eyes gradually faded, his figure becoming more stooped. I picked up the bowl of thin porridge that had long gone cold, my hands trembling so violently that the bowl felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. "Grandpa, eat. It'll be all right." Grandpa shook his head and let out a long sigh. "Silly child, this food is no use to me anymore. You eat it for Grandpa." I brought the spoon to his lips, stubbornly insisting, "Grandpa, eat." Tears blurred my vision, and my bruised face was streaked with tears. Grandpa gently touched my face, his chest heaving violently. After a long pause, he finally spoke slowly. "After I'm gone, they won't be able to tolerate you. There's still some silver here. Take it and find a way out for yourself." With that, he groped along the wall for a long time, pulled out a cloth bundle, and handed it to me. Just as I was about to take it, bang! The door was suddenly kicked open with a loud crash. Liu strode in swiftly and snatched the bundle away. He said coldly, "Old man, you hoard your private money and give it to an outsider instead of your own son. No wonder you've fallen so ill." Zhang Feng followed closely behind, smirking triumphantly. "Good thing I kept an eye out, or that money would have gone to a bastard child." "You old bastard. Think about it, who's been feeding and clothing you all these years? Even on your deathbed, you're still holding out on us." My eyes were bloodshot, my voice hoarse. "An outsider? A bastard? What, the old bastard didn't tell you?" Zhang Feng's face was full of mockery. "You were picked up by the old bastard. You're not my biological child. Don't call me mother from now on. There's no place for you in this family. As for the money, don't even think about it." Boom, those words exploded like thunder in my mind. So that's it. No wonder my brother and I lived under the same roof. Yet one of us toiled from dawn to dusk, barely having enough to eat, while the other was pampered and spoiled, doted on endlessly. So in their eyes, I was just an outsider, a bastard. Grandpa, were they telling the truth? Am I really? I turned to look at Grandpa, hoping for a denial. But the moment my gaze fixed on him, my heart shattered completely. Grandpa had stopped breathing. Heart-wrenching sobs echoed from this icy room, but they couldn't summon any warmth back. At some point, a light rain began to fall outside, shrouding Qingshan village in mist, isolated and detached from the world. I knelt blankly in front of the coffin. I was oblivious to all the sounds around me. The whole village knew I was an adopted child, but I was the last to find out. Even the chance to enter the mourning hall and kneel was only granted to me after I promised to leave Qingshan village forever once the funeral was was over a concession the Li Hus deigned to make. According to custom, the deceased must be buried the following day, which requires the descendants to keep vigil all night. Li Hu and the others had no patience for that. What's more, grandfather had taken precautions against them before his death, which left them displeased. As long as the villagers were around, they put on a show, but the moment everyone left, I was the only one left in the morning hall. Night had deepened. I hadn't eaten or drunk anything all day, and with my weak body and the chill of the night, I soon couldn't hold on any longer. I curled up and collapsed to the ground. Just then, a streak of sword light suddenly shot across the night sky, tearing through the curtain of rain and landing on the stone-paved road in the village. The light dissipated, and a Taoist in a green robe stepped out. His long beard fluttered, and he was immaculately clean though the rain fell wildly in the cold wind. Not a single drop touched him. Wherever he passed, the curtain of rain parted to make way, only closing again after he had walked by. In the morning hall, I seemed to feel something. Opening my eyes slightly in a daze, I saw the Taoist standing before the coffin, sighing deeply. Time truly wears down a man. Decades had passed quietly, and another old friend was separated by the veil of life and death. I shook my head, realizing it wasn't a dream. Hurriedly, I bowed to the Taoist. "This junior, Li Fei, greets you, senior. Are you a friend of my grandfather?" The Taoist said gently, "I am Qinghe, and I once shared a bond with your grandfather." Seeing his extraordinary and otherworldly demeanor, with rain falling like a curtain outside the door, yet his robes remained dry and pristine, I asked respectfully, "Senior, could you be a legendary immortal?" "Haha, an immortal? Among the cultivators of this world, who truly deserves the title of immortal?" Qinghe chuckled. "I have cultivated for over 200 years, braving the elements and living alone. Now my lifespan is nearing its end, yet I have only barely opened 3 spiritual gates, far inferior to your grandfather Li Qing, who lived with an untroubled heart, enjoying a peaceful life and the joys of family. After traveling nearly 20 li while wounded, Mo, one was utterly exhausted. Xiao was also extremely tired from carrying the corpse. After entering the city, the two did not look around but went straight back to the Mo family's medicine shop. The door had been left open when they left. Precisely because the door was open, the barbarians had not entered to search for valuables. The house remained just as everyone had left it the day before. The moment he stepped over the threshold, Mo would shed tears again. Home is a house where loved ones live. Without loved ones, this house could no longer be called a home. But since the people were gone, only this house that they once lived in could bring him some comfort and stability. So here was still home still existed. The two walked slowly on the road. By the time they returned home, it was already dark. Mo, one was wounded and had also caught a chill on the way. After entering, he fainted again. Xiao Wu placed Madame Mo's body in the main hall, then moved all the braziers from the other 2 houses into Mo Wen's room, lit the charcoal to keep Mo Wen warm and dispel the cold. Night fell, and all around was dead silent. In the pitch-black city, only the Mo household had a faint glimmer of light. The barbarians were originally a northern nomadic hunting tribe who loved eating meat. Wherever they went, they left no chickens or dogs alive. Xi'an County was now a veritable dead city, no barking at night, no crowing in the morning. Mo Wen, injured and sick from the cold, had been bedridden for 3 consecutive days. Xiao Wu busied himself by using a cart to pull a coffin from the city's funeral parlor to lay Madame Mo to rest, then search the city for leftover food. On the 4th day, Mo Wen's injuries and illness improved, so he struggled to get up and set up a mourning hall in the main hall for his mother, burning paper money and observing filial piety. At noon on the 4th day, Xiao Wu went out to look for food and had not returned by sunset. As darkness fell, Mo Wen grew anxious. It wasn't his deceased mother he feared, but Xiao Wu's safety. After the hour of E7, 9 p.m., Xiao Wu still hadn't returned. Mo Wen couldn't sit still any longer. He slowly made his way to the front door. It had snowed heavily again the day before, leaving a line of footprints in the snow. Following the footprints, it seemed Xiao Wu had gone to the eastern part of the city. Mo Wen called out loudly for Xiao Wu, but got no response. After hesitating for a moment, he turned back into the house, grabbed a lantern, and followed the footprints to search. The footprints showed that Xiao Wu had been searching door to door for food, but the refugees wouldn't leave any behind, and together with the Hu people's looting, there was very little to eat in the city. Xiao Wu's footprints led all the way to the schoolhouse where Mo Wen used to study. After leaving the schoolhouse, the footprints went east into the wilderness. The door of the lecture hall was open, and it was pitch dark inside. Mo Wen didn't have the courage to go in and investigate. But if he didn't enter the lecture hall, he wouldn't understand why Xiao Wu had entered the eastern mountains after leaving here. After hesitating for a long time, Mo Wen finally did not enter the lecture hall and instead followed Xiao Wu's footprints eastward. Within a few steps, he noticed something unusual. The footprints in the snow heading east from the lecture hall were significantly deeper than before, indicating that Xiao Wu was carrying something very heavy when leaving. When the barbarians invaded, not all the city's residents fled. Some elderly, women, and children chose to stay. Their choice was clearly a mistake, as the city was filled with bodies half buried in snow. With each corpse he saw, Mo Wen's fear increased. He wanted to turn back several times, but after wavering, he chose to continue searching. The footprints continued east into the eastern hills. At the edge of the city, Mo Wen stopped again. Not far ahead was a dark forest. He truly didn't have the courage to enter. Most importantly, he couldn't figure out why Xiao Wu had gone into the woods and what Xiao Wu had taken from the lecture hall. The light from the storm lantern was dim, but in its faint glow, Mo Wen found some sense of security. After standing for a long time, he thought of a plan. He removed the lantern's cover and used the oil lamp to ignite a pile of hay stacked beside a folk house. The fire quickly flared up, growing stronger and eventually spreading to the house itself. The houses in the city stood in rows, and once the fire started, it wouldn't go out for a short time. Once the house was set ablaze, the surroundings suddenly became bright. Mo Wen's fear greatly diminished, and he carried the storm lantern as he entered the eastern hills. In winter, villagers always stockpiled hay for the season. So apart from the large trees that the authorities had banned from being cut down, there were no weeds or bushes in the hills. Mo Wen carried the lantern and followed the footprints deep into the hills. As he walked, he occasionally looked back at the fire in the city to bolster his courage. After passing through the woods, Mo Wen saw a vast expanse of grave mounds. This was the Shi County burial ground, where the dead from the city were brought to be laid to rest. Seeing the cemetery, Mo Wen should have felt fear, but he did not, because he saw Xiao Wu in the northwest corner of the graveyard, wielding a pickaxe and digging a pit. Beside it lay a corpse. Although the distance was too great to see its features, Mo Wen could guess that it was the old master's body. Xiao Wu must have entered the lecture hall while searching for food. Knowing that Mo Wen respected his teacher, after discovering the old master's corpse, Xiao Wu brought it here for burial. Mo Wen, carrying a lantern, walked over to the grave pit Xiao Wu was digging. The pit had already been dug to a depth of 3 feet, and Xiao Wu was leveling the soil at the bottom. Mo Wen approached the old master's corpse, bowed, and paid his respects. When Xiao Wu saw Mo Wen arriving, he immediately quickened his digging pace. Seeing this, Mo Wen waved his hand and spoke. "There's no need to hurry." Xiao Wu nodded upon hearing this, quickly finished leveling the bottom of the grave pit, then lifted the master's corpse and placed it into the pit before backfilling the soil. "The master bestowed upon me the grace of enlightenment and teaching he should be interred in a proper coffin. This is too hasty and careless." Mo Wen sighed and said. Upon hearing this, Xiao Wu turned his head to glance at Mo Wen, then turned back and continued filling the grave. The grave pit was not large, so Little Five quickly refilled it. Mo Wen set down the storm lantern, knelt, and kowtowed to pay his respects. One should kowtow 3 times when paying respects to the deceased, but Mo Wen only managed one before Little Five helped him up. Mo Wen looked at Little Five in confusion. "I have misled my disciple and am unworthy of your solemn obeisance." Little Five spoke. Hearing this, Mo Wen's hair stood on end in an instant. Little Five's words not only carried the old teacher's tone, but even the voice was exactly the same. Mo Wen, don't panic. I only wish to be buried in peace. I have no malicious intent to harm you. Little Five spoke again. Terrified, Mo Wen stared wide-eyed, trembling all over, and backed away repeatedly. The ways of Confucius and Mencius cannot be applied in chaotic times. One must act solely according to one's conscience. Little Five shook his head and sighed. There are too many restless spirits here. This is no place to linger. Flee for your life as soon as possible. Mo Wen's injuries had not yet healed, and after the shock, he fainted again. When he woke again, he found himself on Little Five's back. Recalling how Little Five had been possessed by the old teacher earlier, Mo Wen screamed in fright. "Young master, what is wrong?" Upon hearing this, Xiao Wu quickly put down Mo Wen. You. Mo Wen looked at Xiao Wu in panic. "Young master, how did we end up at the cemetery?" Xiao Wu also looked astonished. "I'm not sure either. There are too many restless spirits here. It's not safe to stay. We must leave as soon as possible." Mo Wen snapped back to reality, repeating the gentleman's words. "All right, I'll carry you back first." Xiao Wu agreed and knelt down again. "No need, I can walk on my own." Mo Wen shook his head and said. By now, they were not far from home, and the fire behind them was still blazing. After this incident, Mo Wen no longer felt safe letting Xiao Wu go out alone to find food. Wherever they went together. At night, they would set fire to houses to keep the city as bright as possible. 2 days passed like this. After Lady Mo's funeral rites were completed and the coffin interred, the two prepared incense and candles and went to the riverbank to burn incense and pay respects. Old Wu, his wife, and Master Mo had all been swept into the swift current under the ice that day. They surely could not have survived. Without any bodies to find, they could only hold a memorial by the river. Then Mo Wen took Xiao Wu to the Mo family ancestral hall and retrieved the gold cakes his father had buried there. These gold cakes were his father's preparation for their future livelihood, but he never expected they would be needed so soon. Mo Wen did not take all 8 gold cakes, he left one behind. This was something he had learned from his father. In life, no one knows what might happen, but it's always necessary to prepare for the unexpected. "Young master, where are we going now?" Once they left the ancestral hall, Xiao Wu asked. "Don't call me young master anymore. Just call me by my name." Mo Wen sighed and said, "We've shared hardships as master and servant. There's no need for worldly distinctions of rank. No matter when, you are still the young master." Xiao Wu shook his head firmly. The Mo family ancestors had saved the lives of the Wu family ancestors, and the Wu family never forgot their gratitude, following them for generations. "My father has passed away. Calling me young master is against propriety and disrespectful to the ancestors." Mo Wen said, "Master." Xiao Wu immediately changed the address. After the master's death, the young master should be addressed as master to show the inheritance of father and son, the continuation of bloodline. "Just call me by my name." Mo Wen did not like this title that carried connotations of hierarchy. "Master, where are we going now?" Xiao Wu asked. "Lao Wu, where do you want to go?" Mo Wen also changed his form of address. This form of address was closer and could to some extent dilute the hierarchical meaning of master. "Master, I'll follow your lead." Xiao Wu did not refuse Mo Wen's change of address for him, because he also had no parents. "I heard that people captured by the barbarians are not necessarily all eaten by them, some are sold. I want to go north. If we encounter the lady, perhaps we can use this money to redeem her." Mo Wen sought Lao Wu's opinion. After all, going north was a very dangerous thing. "All right," Lao Wu immediately nodded. It wasn't that he didn't know how dangerous going north was, but he was already accustomed to obeying and doing as told. After agreeing, Mo Wen took Lao Wu and left Xi'an County, leaving home to go north to search for his wife. When the two left Xi'an County, it was early afternoon. As they headed north, Mo Wen did not turn to look back at Xi'an County. Although it was his hometown, this city had become a dead city. After the sun set, eerie winds blew in the city. At this moment, he just wanted to leave here as soon as possible. Soon after moving forward, a fork appeared in the road. It had snowed not long ago, and neither path showed footprints or cart tracks. "Which road should we take, master?" Old Five asked. "Take the main road." Mo Wen replied after a moment's thought. He didn't know which road was correct and could only rely on luck. Old Five nodded and turned onto the left path. Both were traveling far from home for the first time, with no experience of wandering outside. They could only take things one step at a time. Winter nights fell early, just after the hour of Yu. Darkness descended. At that moment, the two were in the wilderness, with no village ahead and no one behind. They could only press on through the dark, stumbling along by the light of the snow. At the second watch, they saw the faint outline of an extended wall ahead. Based on their speed and travel time, this should be Qingping City, 50 li from Xi'an County. The city had no civilians, it was a garrison of the Jin state. After spotting the city, they quickened their pace. Drawing closer, Mo noticed no lights inside the city. No lights meant no barbarians were living there. Compared to ghosts and spirits, Mo was more afraid of barbarians, so the lack of light in the city actually comforted him greatly. The city gates were wide open, and the heavy snow hadn't completely buried the slaughter. The city was filled with corpses in various states of death, but by now the two of them no longer felt as frightened seeing the bodies as before. After entering the city, they found an abandoned barracks to rest and take shelter. "Master, can we start a fire?" Old Five stamped his feet and asked. "It's fine. The barbarians shouldn't be coming back." After a brief pause, Mo said, before this, his parents had handled everything, and he wasn't used to making decisions on his own, but now he had to learn to make them. There was a fire pit in the barracks, with scattered firewood and kindling around. Old Five quickly started a fire. After walking for dozens of miles in the snow, both their shoes were already soaked. Once the fire was lit, the two leaned close to it to dry their snow-wet shoes. "Master, are we on the right road?" Old Five asked. "Yes." Mo nodded and said, "How do you know the barbarians also took this road on their way back?" Old Five asked in confusion. "The bodies on the main road in the city have all been moved to the sides, obviously to make way for carts. The barbarians came on horseback, but on their return, they would drive carts to carry the loot." Montak Veen explained. "They're riding horses and driving carts. We definitely can't catch up to them." Lao Wu looked a bit dejected. "They have to stop sometime." And Moen said, "Master, once we pass Qingping City, we'll be in barbarian territory. If the barbarians see us, will they kill us both?" Lao Wu asked worriedly. "Probably not. A schoolmate of mine fled with his whole family from Zhao to Xi'an a few years ago. According to him, in Zhao, the barbarians cannot indiscriminately kill Han Chinese." And Moen said, "Since the barbarians don't kill Han Chinese, why did his family still flee?" Lao Wu pressed further. And Moen heard this, smiled wryly, and shook his head. "I heard that in Zhao, if a barbarian sets his eyes on a Han person's belongings, he can just take them. Even female family members can be taken, and the government won't investigate. We have nothing now. As long as we hide our silver well, we don't need to fear them robbing us." Lao Wu said, "Indeed, we can't keep it in the bundle." And Moen nodded and spoke. "Where should we hide it?" Lao Wu muttered to himself, "Melt it down and hide it in the shoes." At that moment, Mo1 was drying his shoes by the fire. A flash of inspiration struck him, and he thought of an idea. What a brilliant scheme. Old Five gave Mo1 a thumbs up. Upon hearing this, Mo1 frowned and glanced at Old Five. Servants from scholarly families knew a little official language, but they only picked it up incidentally from their masters, so they often used it incorrectly without fully understanding it. At that time, there was no official currency. Common people and merchants used copper coins from the previous dynasty or bits of gold and silver. When they accumulated enough, they melted it into large ingots for storage. Thus, melting gold and silver was a skill every household possessed, and Old Five knew it too. The two of them melted the gold cakes and hammered them into 4 bars, each carrying 2. The gold flakes that fell off during the hammering were set aside for spending. "Master, do you think the lady and my unbetrothed humble wife are still alive?" After finishing, Old Five took out some dry rations and handed them to Mo1. "You cannot call her humble wife before she is married to you." Hearing this, Mo1 felt a mix of wanting to laugh and cry. He wanted to laugh because Old Five was still thinking about Lin Ruochen's maidservant, but wanted to cry because Xiao Wu's question was exactly what he had been afraid to think about all along. "Do you think they are still alive?" Old Five stared straight at Mo1. "Alive." Mo1 closed his eyes and said, "The barbarians eat people. How do you know they are still alive?" Old Five asked again. Mo1 didn't respond. Instead, he reached up to wipe away the tears that had welled in his eyes under the pretense of rubbing his forehead. He had carefully chosen his previous words. Lin Ruochen and that maid were probably still alive, but the reason they had survived was something he didn't want to face. "Sir, please tell me." Old Five hadn't noticed Mo1's gesture and kept pressing. Although Mo1 called him Old Five, He was actually still little 5 a year younger than Imowen. The two of them, mistress and maid, are beautiful. The barbarians won't bear to eat them. Imowen's voice trembled. Having just endured such a tremendous upheaval, he had learned a lesson. Cruel things won't cease to happen just because someone closes their eyes. Some things are inevitable, whether you want to see them or not. You mean the barbarians will keep Madam and my unmarried wife to sell at a good price? Wu asked. Imowen was extremely grieved at that moment. Lin Ruochen had fallen into the hands of the barbarians and would inevitably suffer humiliation. This was already a foregone conclusion. He could neither stop it nor change it, which broke his heart and made him wish for death. But Wu's words also struck him as rather amusing. Wu was always fixated on the promise he had made, afraid that his master might not follow through, and so he kept throwing around phrases like my humble wife and my old lady to try to secure the matter. You're right. The barbarians will keep them alive to sell, so they're still alive. We have over 30 taels of gold, which should be enough to buy them. When that time comes, I'll let you marry her, Imowen said after a moment of silence. He didn't want to make Xiao Wu feel bad, so he didn't spell it out. Thank you, young master. Wu happily thanked him. Imowen nodded and smiled, but despite the smile, his heart was full of sorrow. A servant's loyalty comes partly from inherited bloodline and partly from the master's genuine treatment. Imowen's words deeply moved Xiao Wu, who attended to him with great enthusiasm, bringing water and making the bed. Young master, these boots are for officials to wear. Take them. Old Wu handed a pair of dried boots to Imowen. Your shoes are worn out, so you can keep wearing them. Imowen waved his hand and said, All right. Old Wu started trying on the boots. The boots were well made with rabbit fur lining inside, and they felt very comfortable once worn. After putting on the boots, Old Wu walked back and forth to test if they fit. Imowen suddenly thought of something. You can't wear these boots. I have strong vitality. I'm not afraid, even if they were worn by the dead. Old Wu said casually. These boots belong to a Jin state captain. If you wear them to the Zhao state, the Hu people might mistake you for a spy. Imowen explained. What is a spy? Old Wu heard this term for the first time. It means a scout, Imowen explained. Upon hearing this, Old Wu showed fear, quickly took off the boots, and threw them into the fire. But as soon as he threw them in, he grabbed them out again and kept a rabbit fur lining that wasn't burned yet. Master, you're becoming more and more like Grandmaster, thinking things through thoroughly, Old Wu said to Imowen. After Old Wu finished speaking, Imowen did not respond but stared blankly at the branches in the fire. During this time, he felt that he had been overthinking. Without his parents' protection, he had to rely on himself for everything. People are like trees. A man losing his father is like a tree losing its crown. As the old saying goes, when the crown breaks, new shoots grow. When the father departs, the son takes charge. The loss of his entire family forced him to learn to think and survive in the shortest possible time, both cruel and swift. Sir, listen. Just as Imowen was lost in thought, Old Wu interrupted him. Snapping back to reality, Imowen listened carefully and heard footsteps outside. The footsteps were hurried, approaching from afar, clearly heading for the room where they were. The sudden footsteps shocked both of them. They had noticed no footprints in Qingping City when they arrived earlier, so the person outside must have come from outside the city. Sir, what should we do? Old Wu urgently asked Imowen for a plan. Imowen was extremely panicked at that moment, instinctively wanting to flee. But then it occurred to him that there was only one set of footsteps, so it probably wasn't the Hu people. Besides, the Hu had no reason to come here in the dead of night to capture them. It's probably not the Hu people. Imowen stated his judgment. Imowen's judgment was accurate. The newcomer was indeed not a barbarian. But in his panic, he had taken too much time to think things through. As soon as he finished speaking, a voice came from outside the house. Boundless Heavenly Lord. Imowen turned his head at the sound and saw a young Taoist in a blue robe standing outside the door. He was around 20 years old, with a clean-shaven face, his hair coiled in a top knot, a large bundle in his left hand, and a long sword in his right. Could you two young gentlemen do me a favor and let me rest here for a while? The young Taoist said to the two. We are also passing through. Please come in, priest, Imowen said. Imowen stood up to welcome him. As long as it wasn't a barbarian, whether monk or Taoist, man or woman, he was welcome. Only after receiving Mo Wen's permission did the Taoist step into the room. After entering, he set down his bundle and sword and cupped his hands in greeting. This humble priest pays his respects. By the firelight, Mo Wen noticed that this man's gesture differed from ordinary people's. When ordinary people cupped their hands, they made a fist with the right hand and wrapped it with the left, but this Taoist, when he saluted, grasped the bent thumb of his left hand with his right hand. "Please sit down, priest," Mo Wen invited again. The young Taoist's brows and hair were covered in frost, clearly frozen stiff. Upon hearing this, he quickly walked to the fire to warm himself. "Lao Wu, give some food to the Taoist master," Mo Wen said to Lao Wu. Lao Wu took a piece of flatbread from his bundle and handed it to the young Taoist. After thanking him, the young Taoist took it and ate slowly. Seeing him struggle to swallow, Mo Wen poured half a bowl of warm water for him. The young Taoist nodded in gratitude, took the earthen bowl, and drained it in one gulp. "Thank you both." The young Taoist finished eating and stood up, looking as if he was about to leave. "The winter night is cold. Master, why not stay here tonight?" Mo Wen urged him to stay. He and Lao Wu had just left home and were completely in the dark, desperately wanting to talk to someone to learn about the outside world. "The road ahead is long and arduous. I cannot slack off. These 2 wooden plaques are for you two. Perhaps they will bring good fortune." The young Taoist took out 2 palm-sized yellow wooden plaques from his bundle and handed one to Mo Wen and one to Lao Wu. "Thank you, master." Mo Wen took the plaque and thanked the young Taoist. The young Taoist's bundle was full of such plaques, likely numbering in the thousands, probably protective charms for pilgrims. The young Taoist didn't stay long to bid farewell, coming and going in haste. "Master, this Taoist protective talisman is a bit strange." Lao Wu said. "What's strange about it?" Mo Wen stood at the door, watching the Taoist depart southward. "I can't understand the talismans drawn by other Taoists, but there's one character on this one I recognize." Lao Wu spoke. Mo Wen felt slightly puzzled upon hearing this. Although Lao Wu was diligent, he was unwilling to study the characters he recognized totaled no more than 100. With doubts in mind, Mo Wen walked to the campfire and, by the firelight, carefully examined the wooden plaque. He found that it was not the kind of protective talisman drawn by Taoists he had seen before. Instead, it had writing on both sides. The writing on the back was small and dense, hard to discern in the dim light. The writing on the front was large and sparse, consisting of only 2 vermilion seal script characters. "Shangxing, master." "The first character is Shang. What's the one below?" Lao Wu asked Qing. Mo Wen picked up a few pieces of firewood and threw them into the fire. "What is Shangxing?" Lao Wu asked casually. "The 3 patriarchs of Taoism are called the 3 pure ones by the world. Shangxing is one of them," Mo Wen replied. "Taoism and Confucianism coexist and complement each other. Confucian classics happen to be the main subject of my studies." "What was written on the back of the wooden tablet?" Old Wu asked curiously. Mo Wen leaned closer to the fire to examine the writing on the back of the wooden token by its light. The token was no larger than a palm, with dense small characters written from right to left and top to bottom, arranged in 5 lines. Line 1. At the Millennium Dharma Assembly, the Supreme One personally selects the worthy to grant boundless salvation across the world. Line 2. At the Supreme Dharma Ground on Mount Wuliang, Min Prefecture. Line 3. The 15th day of the 1st lunar month in the year of Xinqiu. Line 4. Bring 10 taels of silver. Line 5. Iwei 924. After reading it, Mo Wen shook his head with a wry smile and tossed the token back into the fire. "What's the matter, sir?" Old Wu asked, puzzled, seeing Mo Wen discard the token. "This is an invitation from a crooked priest using the guise of taking disciples to swindle money," Mo Wen replied casually. Zhang refers to a fine wood that is fragrant and easy to carve, so Zhang selection metaphorically means selecting promising talents. Wuliang Duran is about spreading the way. "What does it say?" "Read it out loud, so I can hear too," Old Wu said, curious, handing his own token to Mo Wen. Mo Wen leaned closer to the fire to examine the writing on the back of the wooden token by its light. The token was no larger than a palm, with dense small characters written from right to left and top to bottom, arranged in 5 lines. Line 1. At the Millennium Dharma Assembly, The Supreme One personally selects the worthy to grant boundless salvation across the world. Line 2. At the Supreme Dharma Ground on Mount Wuyang, Min Prefecture. Line 3. The 15th day of the first lunar month in the year of Shinshou. Line 4. Bring 10 taels of silver. Line 5. Iwei, 924. After reading it, Imowen shook his head with a wry smile and tossed the token back into the fire. "What's the matter, sir?" Old Wu asked, puzzled, seeing Imowen discard the token. "This is an invitation from a crooked priest using the guise of taking disciples to swindle money," Imowen replied casually. Zhang refers to a fine wood that is fragrant and easy to carve, so Zhang selection metaphorically means selecting promising talents. Wuyang Duran is about spreading the way. "What does it say? Read it out loud, so I can hear too," Old Wu said, curious, handing his own token to Imowen. Imowen leaned closer to the fire to examine the writing on the back of the wooden token by its light. The token was no larger than a palm, with dense small characters written from right to left and top to bottom, arranged in 5 lines. Line 1. At the Millennium Dharma Assembly, the Supreme One personally selects the worthy to grant boundless salvation across the world. Imowen had no choice but to read the words on the wooden tablet. The contents of the 2 tablets were roughly the same. Only the number in the last column differed. This tablet read, Iwei 369. "Master, how do you know this is a scam?" Old 5 couldn't see the trick. "Have you ever seen an immortal?" Imowen retorted. "You've never seen an immortal, so how could they possibly let us see one?" Old 5 shook his head. "That's it. Shangqing is one of the 3 legendary immortals with the highest divine powers. How could he descend to the mortal world to take disciples? Besides, immortals live on wind and dew, detached from the world. If they accepted money to teach the way, wouldn't that be like street performers?" Imowen said, "You're right. What does the last sentence mean?" Old 5 nodded and then asked again. "According to the numbering system using the heavenly stems and earthly branches, one cycle is 60 years. If the tablets were all complete, there should be tens of thousands with the same number." Imowen returned the wooden tablet to Old 5. No one taking disciples could take tens of thousands. Old 5 took the tablet and was about to throw it into the fire. "Don't burn it, keep it." Imowen stopped Old 5 when he saw this. "What's the use of keeping it?" Old 5 asked. Imowen did not answer Old Wu's question. Old Wu had been frightened half to death after being possessed by the old scholar earlier. This wooden plaque was given by the Taoist regardless of whether it was genuine or not. Carrying it would do no harm and might bring some benefit. The night passed without incident. The next morning, the 2 set out to search for food in the city. North of Qingping City lay the territory of the Hu tribes, and the road ahead was fraught with danger. Imowen anticipated encountering many perils on the journey north, but he was uncertain where the dangers would come from. The only preparation he could make in advance was to gather as much dry rations as possible. This place had once been garrisoned by many soldiers, so there was naturally some food. Although most of it had been taken away by the Hu, a fair amount was still scattered around. Stoves and cooking utensils remained. Little Wu baked quite a few millet cakes. At noon, the 2 left Qingping City, carrying their provisions and the cold weather clothes they had scavenged. The area north of Qingping City was extremely desolate. The former roads were overgrown with weeds. Houses had collapsed, and the fields lay barren. The Hu had established the Zhao Kingdom over a decade ago. This region, being on the border between the 2 states, had no ordinary people daring to live here. They had fled as early as more than 10 years ago. 30 li ahead, the snow on the ground began to thin, revealing hoof prints and cart tracks in the snow. For dozens of li around, there was no sign of human habitation. These hoof prints and cart tracks were undoubtedly left by the Hu people who had invaded the south earlier. Continuing northward, piles of filth could be seen on both sides of the road from time to time. The filth was scattered, not far from the road, showing that the Hu people were not only brutal and savage, but also utterly shameless. The 2 traveled swiftly, covering over 70 li by dusk. On the sunny side of a wind-sheltered hillside, they found traces of a previous Hu rest stop. There was no snow here, and they could see scattered pieces of women's torn clothing all around. At that time, respectable women's clothing was mostly blue or green, rarely red. Yet Imowen spotted a red skirt in the grass to the east of the road. "Master, it seems to be the madam's skirt." Lao Wu ran over and retrieved the torn red skirt. Mo closed his eyes and nodded. According to propriety, women should wear an upper garment, trousers underneath, and a skirt over them, regardless of the season. However, in Xi'an County, not many families were well off. The daughters of poor households had no money to buy cloth for skirts. Only the women of merchants and officials could afford to wear skirts year-round. And this skirt was red, so it could only have belonged to Lin Ruochen that day, no one else. Sir, madam, was she violated by them? Lao Wu's eyes widened. Mo opened his eyes and stared blankly at Xiao Wu for a moment, neither nodding nor shaking his head. Before this, he had already anticipated what might happen, but he hadn't expected the barbarians to openly rape the captured women in this desolate wilderness. And among those defiled women was his own lawful wife. Sir, did you already guess the barbarians would do this? Lao Wu inferred from Mo's expression that he had already mentally prepared himself. When a sheep enters a tiger's den, how can it escape unscathed? Mo nodded silently. Lao Wu said no more and handed the torn red skirt to Mo. Does the master still want it? Mo stared at the torn red dress, hesitated briefly, then reached out to take it. Master, you truly want to keep this thing? Old Five did not let go. She had no choice. She cannot be blamed. Mo sighed and spoke. He understood what Old Five meant. At that time, there were 5 reasons a husband could divorce his wife, and the first was a woman losing her chastity. Master, if the old master were still alive, he would never allow you to marry a woman who has been touched by a barbarian. Old Five still did not let go. An unintentional mistake. It would be unjust to blame her. Mo was extremely conflicted. Since childhood, he had studied the books of sages. Confucianism held that men were superior to women as the natural order. If a woman lost her chastity, the only way to gain the world's forgiveness was to commit suicide. But there was no corpse of Lin Ruochen here, meaning Lin Ruochen was still alive. Deep down, Mo believed that Lin Ruochen's loss of chastity was forced upon her, but years of Confucian indoctrination made him somewhat dissatisfied with her willingness to compromise. Master, you must think carefully. You are not like us servants. Old Five reluctantly let go. He was only a servant. He could only remind a master, not defy him. I have made up my mind a married couple cannot be heartless. Mo folded the red dress neatly and tucked it into his bosom. The villagers will look down on us. Old Five made a final effort. Mo's decision was indeed generous toward Lin Ruochen, but it would harm the reputation of the Mo family, a truth that even an illiterate servant like him understood. Fellow villagers? You and I? What villagers do we have anymore? Mo turned and walked forward. The sun set and the moon rose. The two found no place to rest, so they had to travel through the night. Old Five spoke much less than before. He did not agree with Mo's decision. The reason was simple. In his eyes, Mo was a master, a man of standing who could not marry a wife who had lost her chastity. Leaving home and traveling far, not everything goes as one wishes. That night, the two never found a suitable place to rest and finally had to spend the night huddled in an abandoned house that had been roofless for over a decade. For 3 consecutive days, aside from a woman's corpse lying dead by the roadside, they hadn't seen a single soul. Only then did Mo understand why the Taoist he had met earlier was so starving. The Taoist might not have known that this region was devoid of human habitation for 300 li. Master, I'm scared, Xiao Wu said, his voice trembling. Even beasts do not eat their own kind. Those not of our race are bound to have different hearts. Mo, like Xiao Wu, spoke with chattering teeth. Maybe we should go back. It's still not too late. Xiao was truly terrified. At this time, they calculated their ages in nominal years, though they called each other old. In fact, he was only 15 and Mo was just 16. No, the sage said, if a man lacks trustworthiness, I don't know what he is good for. I once promised her that I would never let her down. I cannot break my word. Mo stepped forward. He dared not hesitate, for fear that in his terror he might do something that would make him untrustworthy. But they hadn't gone far before Mo stopped. Old Wu, seeing Mo's strange behavior, hurried over. Lifting his head to look ahead, he was scared out of his wits. A troop of soldiers was galloping toward them from due north. What should we do, young master? Old Wu, in his nervousness, once again addressed him incorrectly. Run. Avoiding danger is human instinct. Ahead, A troop of cavalry was galloping towards them. This was barbarian territory, so of course they were barbarians. Mo1, in panic, turned around and fled with Old Wu. The two were carrying large amounts of dry provisions and had gold hidden in their shoes, so they couldn't run fast. The sound of horses' hooves behind them grew closer. Mo1 anxiously looked around, trying to find a place to hide. But the two had lost their composure earlier and hadn't dodged into the forest. Instead, they ran back along the main road. By now, they had run out of the forest, surrounded by a grassy meadow with nowhere to hide. It was too late to turn back. By then, the cavalry behind had spotted Mo1 and the other and were shouting loudly, "Stop!" Seeing that escape was impossible, Mo1 simply stopped and stood by the roadside, watching the troop rapidly approach. Old Wu, seeing Mo1 stop, also gave up trying to flee and turned back to stand beside Mo1. The 20 or so riders galloping from afar were dressed exactly like the barbarian who had shot at him earlier, and they all carried bows and curved swords. What puzzled Mo1 was that there were 3 women among them, and a girl in a black fur coat was at the forefront. The horsemen quickly arrived near Mo1. The girl in the black fur coat reined in her horse, and those behind swiftly spurred their mounts to surround Mo1 and Old Wu. Among them, only the girl in the black fur coat wore a puzzled expression. Everyone else, including the other 2 women, looked furious. "Why have you 2 trespassed into the hunting grounds?" The girl in the black fur coat tilted her head and studied Mo1 and Old Wu. Mo1 had already prepared for the worst, intending to curse the barbarians before he died. He was mulling over his insults when, unexpectedly, although these barbarians carried bows and swords, they did not immediately attack the 2 of them. "I didn't know this was a hunting ground." Mo1 looked up and stared straight at the girl in the black fur coat. She was not old, seemingly about 14 or 15, with fair skin, a high-nosed bridge, and large eyes, very pretty. But at this moment, Mo1 wasn't focused on her beauty. Instead, he noticed that her face clearly bore the features of a Hu person. "How dare you? Lower your head." As soon as Mo1 finished speaking, a Hu man on the right swung his whip at him. Mo1 didn't dodge in time, and a bloody mark appeared on his face. But he didn't lower his head. Instead, he turned and glared furiously at the Hu man who had struck him. Seeing his defiance, the Hu man flew into a rage and struck again with a backhanded whip. Xiao Wu, who had been watching closely from the side, quickly rushed to Mo1's side and took the blow for him. "Why did you hit him?" The girl in the black fur coat looked displeasedly at the Hu man who had swung the whip. "To answer your highness, these 2 have been acting suspiciously and looking uneasy. I believe they are not subjects of Zhao, but spies sent by the southern barbarians." The Hu man cupped his hands toward the girl in the black fur coat. "Where did you 2 come from?" The girl in the black fur coat frowned and looked at the 2 of them. Only now did Mo1 realize that the girl in the black fur coat was actually the Zhao princess, and she seemed kind enough, so he answered truthfully. "Some days ago, my wife was taken away by your country's official troops. We 2, master and servant, are heading north to find her." As soon as Mo1 said this, the Hu people around him drew their swords in unison, glaring at the 2 with malicious intent. Anyone who is not a subject of Zhao and enters the border without permission must be a spy, and the punishment is execution. The Hu had cracked the whip earlier shouted loudly, "We're not spies." Montakveen argued loudly. He was not afraid of death, but he was unwilling to suffer an unjust accusation. "If you're not spies, why did you run when you saw us?" The Hu drove their horses closer. "There are many corpses that have been eaten by people in the forest ahead. My servant and I were terrified, so we dodged." Mo1 stared at the scimitars in the Hu's hands. It was the same kind of blade that had cut off his father-in-law's head. "Go and have a look," the girl in black fur said to the Hu. Upon hearing this, he turned his horse and went to investigate. After a moment, he rode back and nodded to the girl. "There's no shortage of military rations at this time, so why eat them? After the hunt, go investigate and find out which general's men did this, then reprimand them." The girl in black fur instructed the Hu. The Hu man replied in a muffled voice, acknowledging the order. Mo1 and Old Fifth listened on the sidelines, their hearts pounding. The implication of the young woman in the black fur coat was that their army indeed resorted to cannibalism, and she did not see it as wrong, only that there was no need to eat human flesh when military rations were available. After speaking, the young woman in the black fur coat glanced sideways at Mo1 and Old Fifth, clearly deliberating how to deal with them. Your Highness, my master and I came here searching for my mistress. Whether we find her or not, we won't be going back. My master is a learned man and also knows medicine. Please don't kill us, we are not spies. Seeing that Mo1 had not begged for mercy, Old Fifth stepped forward and spoke, swallowing his fear. How dare you spout sweet words to deceive the princess? Spies like you southern barbarians won't confess without some persuasion. Come, give each of them 30 lashes. This man seems to have a deep prejudice against the Han people. Your Highness, with your keen perception and discerning eyes, you should be able to see that we are not spies. Helpless, Mo1 had no choice but to speak up. You have some insight after all. Ho Boyan, give them a travel pass and let them go. The young woman in the black fur coat smiled and said to the Human, May I ask, Your Highness, how did you recognize that they are not spies? The who named Ho Boyan asked cautiously. They run too slowly to be spies. While speaking, the girl in black fur spotted a wild deer in the grass and excitedly galloped after it. Have you caught any prey in this hunting ground? The who took a square piece of cardboard from the side pouch of his saddle and threw it in front of the two. No. First, we have no intention of hunting. Second, we run too slowly to catch up. Mo1 bent down to pick up the cardboard from the ground. I hate you southern barbarians with your endless classical phrases. Get lost. The who lashed his whip, knocking Mo1 to the ground, then rode off to catch up with the others. Master, are you all right? Old Five helped Mo1, who had fallen to the ground, to his feet. It's nothing serious. What about you? Does it hurt? Mo1 straightened up and spoke. Although he wore thick winter clothes, the whip's force was great, and his back now felt like it was on fire. But the joy in his heart made him forget the pain. It was already lucky to have survived, and unexpectedly he had even obtained a name card. Thank you for your concern, Master. I'm fine. Lao was touched. In his eyes, taking the whip for Mo when earlier was a servant's duty, but he didn't expect Mo1 to remember it. After receiving the pass, the two hurriedly left and continued northward. Master, there's something I can't figure out. Lao frowned for a long time before finally speaking out. What? Mo1 asked. How did you know that the Hu princess could tell we weren't spies? Lao voiced the question that had been troubling him. I didn't know whether she could tell. I just praised her, saying she had a divine body and phoenix eyes that discern right from wrong. If she continued to think we were spies, then she would be an ordinary mortal blind to truth. Mo1 sighed. Praising an enemy was something he wouldn't have done before, but to stay alive, he had to go against his heart. He finally understood the helplessness of having to bow one's head when under someone else's roof. Oh, in our words, you flattered her. Lao suddenly understood. Flattery is not the conduct of a gentleman. Mo1 sighed again. It's fine. You're the gentleman, and I'm just a servant. From now on, I'll be the one to say nice things and flatter people. Old Five said with a grin. Don't call yourself a servant ever again. You and I are now brothers in adversity. Besides, when has my Mo family ever treated your Wu family as servants? Mo1 said seriously. Thank you, Master. Old Five cupped his hands to Mo1 in thanks. Mo1 glanced at Old Five helplessly. Old Five's habits were already formed and couldn't be changed in a short time. Master, I heard that the princess of our Jin kingdom usually doesn't leave the palace, and when she does, she brings a large entourage. How dare this barbarian princess come out hunting with just a few people? Old Five took out a flatbread and handed it to Mo1. The barbarians are different from the Han. Their ancestors made a living by hunting. Mo1 took the flatbread and took a bite. When his father was alive, the family was only well off, not wealthy. Therefore, after falling on hard times, he didn't feel a great licha and wasn't picky about food. I didn't expect barbarian women to be quite pretty too. Old Five took a big bite of the flatbread and chewed. Those not of our kind are sure to be of a different mind. Even if they look like heavenly fairies, inside they are as vicious as vipers. Mo1 shot Old Wu glare. I think her heart isn't entirely cruel. If not for her today, we wouldn't have made it out alive. Old Wu didn't notice Mo when staring at him. Mo1 didn't argue with Old Wu any further. Although the woman in the black fur coat had let them off, her words still revealed her contempt for the Han people. She even seemed to think that cannibalism wasn't wrong. These were the wolfish traits hidden beneath her beauty. They hadn't gone far before they started shivering. Earlier, they had wondered why the princess had brought so few people hunting. Now they understood the real escort was behind, and there were at least 1,000 of them. Even with the princess's letter of introduction, Wen decided to take a detour. Better to avoid trouble than to invite it. That evening, they finally saw a city and its winding walls. The letter of passage worked its magic. The guards at the gate kept it and let them in. Whatever the black fur princess's true nature, Wen was beginning to feel grateful to her. Without that letter, after traveling such a great distance, they wouldn't even have been able to enter the city. Both of them were traveling far from home for the first time and had entered a foreign land. Upon arriving in the city of Zhao, Wen found that it was similar to Jin. Most of the soldiers were Han Chinese, and there were few barbarians on the streets. After entering the city, they began asking around. Since the barbarians did not often come south, they quickly learned that the barbarians had taken the grain wagons and the captured women north. Since it was getting dark, they did not continue their journey and found an inn to stay. Wen negotiated with the innkeeper and exchanged the gold flakes that had chipped off when melting the gold ingot for loose silver and copper coins. Exhausted from traveling for days, they finally did not have to sleep outdoors. After settling in, they quickly fell asleep. The next morning, when Wen got up, he found that Old Wu had already prepared fresh water for him to wash. After thanking him, Wen simply splashed his face a few times without combing his hair. After washing up, the two left the inn and continued their pursuit northward. Every so often, Wen and Old Wu would ask nearby shopkeepers about the army's whereabouts to make sure they were heading in the right direction. At noon, they stopped at a food stall north of the city, bought 2 bowls of hot porridge, and ate the flatbreads they had brought with them. Wen knew well the principle that one would deplete resources if idle, so he had been frugal throughout the journey. He only stopped at this eatery to speak with the kind-faced vendor, who had been running a stall by the roadside for years and must be well informed and experienced. "Elder brother, may I ask if you have seen a group of whose soldiers passing by with stolen grain and women a few days ago?" Wen asked the hemp-clothed vendor, who appeared to be in his 30s. "Yes, I saw them. It's been a while. They headed north." "Young brother, where do you come from?" the vendor asked. "The south." Wen replied vaguely. "You are from the Jin kingdom, aren't you?" the vendor asked. "Elder brother, why would you think that?" Wen broke out in a cold sweat upon hearing this. He and Old Five were deep in this hostile territory and couldn't help being overly suspicious. The Zhao court had long issued a notice forbidding the use of the word "Hu" for the Hu people. They must be called countrymen. The vendor clasped his hands and stamped his feet. It was cold in winter, even at noon. "Thank you for the reminder, elder brother. To be honest, my servant, my brother, and I are indeed from Jin, but we did not sneak in. Someone gave us the credentials to enter the city." Worried that the vendor might report him, Wen quickly explained. The stall owner was not talkative hearing this. He just nodded and didn't say anything more. "We too have just arrived at your esteemed place, ignorant and naive. Kind elder brother, do you have any words of advice for us brothers?" Wen asked. "Never show your wealth, or you will be looted by the countrymen. If the countrymen set their eyes on something, they can seize it freely, and Han people must not resist." The stall owner said kindly. "We are refugees here. How could we have any wealth?" Wen became nervous again. "Isn't this wealth?" The stall owner pointed at the bundle the two were carrying. The bundle was full of dry rations. Upon hearing this, Wen suddenly understood. At that time, ordinary families had only 2 bowls of thin gruel a day. Such a large amount of dry rations was indeed not something poor people could carry. "Thank you, elder brother, for the reminder." Wen stood up, took out some small coins, and handed 3 to the stall owner. "Thank you, little brother. From now on, if you encounter countrymen, avoid them if possible. If you cannot, lower your head and make way, so as not to invite trouble." The stall owner accepted the 3 small coins. The porridge only cost 2, the extra one was Wen's tip. Wen made a bow to the stall owner. Then he and Old Fifth shouldered the bundle and prepared to leave. Suddenly, he thought of something. "May I ask, big brother, how much silver would it cost to buy a woman in the state of Zhao?" For a young woman, it would cost 3 taels of silver. For an old or young one, a few dozen copper coins. It varies from person to person. The stall owner replied. "Many thanks for your guidance, big brother." Wen led Old Five away from the food stall. "Master, what's wrong?" Old Five asked after they left the stall. because Mo wouldn't have been sighing the whole time. These days, buying an ox or a horse costs nearly 10 taels of silver. In a chaotic world, people are as cheap as weeds, worth less than livestock. And Mo shook his head. He hadn't expected women to be so cheap. All old Five could do was sigh along with him. The farther north they traveled, the harder it was to get information, because there were more forked roads. At a fork, there was no one to ask for directions, so they had to take one path and keep going until they reached a populated city or village to inquire. If the villagers hadn't seen soldiers escorting a cart with a woman, the two would have to turn back and take another fork. Going back and forth could be several hundred li, requiring days of walking to cover the distance. And Mo seldom walked so hard that blisters formed on his soles, as if stepping on a bed of needles. Lao felt sorry for him and suggested buying a horse, but Mo shook his head and refused. The common people in the state of Zhao lived worse than those in Jin, so few rode horses on the road. The two of them were not conspicuous in their current attire, but riding a horse would draw attention. Besides, he worried that the horse might be taken by the Hu people, whose unreasonableness he had witnessed in recent days. He had seen with his own eyes Hu people eating at Han shops and food stalls without paying silver. Half a month later, their dried rations ran out. They could only buy food along the way and continue their search. Because of the time spent recovering from injuries at home and holding the funeral for his deceased mother, plus the half-month delay on the road, it became increasingly difficult to get information. Fortunately, Lin Ruochen had been wearing red clothes that day, which left some impression on the locals. Although they wasted many days, they never lost track. However, later a change occurred. Though the locals along the way remembered seeing Hu's soldiers, they had not seen any of the captured women. Master, the two towns are less than 10 li apart. How is it that people in the front town still saw the madam? But here the madam has disappeared. Old Five asked Mo. There are many eyes and ears here. The barbarians won't eat people in a place like this. She probably changed her clothes. It's been hard on you, following me around. And Mo said to Old Five with a hint of apology. For over half a month, the two had endured hardships on the road, the fatigue of traveling needless to say. Due to being in unfamiliar territory and not knowing the geography, they had missed lodging many times and slept in the wilderness. Over time, both had grown thinner. Master, you're wrong to say that. I ought to follow you. Are we still searching? Old Five sat by the roadside, watching the passers-by. We search. If she's alive, we find her. If she's dead, we find her body. And Mo said solemnly. The hardships along the way had not changed his mind. Master, there's something I've been wondering about. Old Five shook his head. You're wondering why I must find her, aren't you? Montak Vane smedet bitterly. During this time, he had often asked himself the same question. The answer he gave himself was that they were a married couple who had bowed to each other. He still held a strand of Lin Ruochen's hair in his bosom, and likewise, Lin Ruochen had his hair. This was a promise they had made to each other. Confucius and Mencius all said that a person must have integrity and not break their word. No, that's not it. I want to ask, other people's wedding nights are all quiet, but you and your wife's wedding night was like putting on an opera with all that blowing and strumming. Old Five grinned and asked, when two people meet for the first time, they can't help but feel shy. Playing the zither and flute was to get familiar with each other. And Mo answered truthfully, Master, you and the lady haven't, done it yet, have you? Old Bu asked curiously. In broad daylight, how could I have the face to do that? And Mo hesitated for a moment, but still answered Old Five's question. You scholars have too many rules. If it were me, I wouldn't care whether it's day or night. Now look, someone else got ahead of you. Old Five looked unwilling. Upon hearing this, Mo gave Old Five a helpless look. Although Old Five had inherited his ancestors' loyalty and righteousness, he hadn't inherited their taciturnity. After he came of age, he had peeped at maids bathing more than once. Master, what do we do now? Seeing Mo's displeased expression, Old Five quickly changed the subject. Mo stood up straight and walked eastward. Let's ask around in town some more. The town wasn't large, and before long, the two had gathered information. The main force of the Hu people had headed north with supplies, leaving behind dozens of men who had taken the captured women and seized several dozen civilian homes on the east side of the town for the night. The next day, they led those women to the human market 80 miles due east. Most of the women the Hu raiders captured were sent there for sale. Auntie, have you seen a young woman in a red dress? Mo when asked an elderly man whose home had been requisitioned. I haven't seen one in a red dress, but there was a girl in red trousers with very pretty features. She stayed in my home. The elderly woman recalled. Was she also taken to the human market by those soldiers? Mo when asked urgently. Since there was no one separately in a red dress, but someone separately in red trousers, he was certain the person the elder mentioned was Lin Ruochen. We were all driven away at the time. When we returned, those soldiers and those girls were already gone. The elderly woman shook her head. Upon hearing this, Mo let out a long sigh and clasped his hands in a bow to the elderly woman. Thank you, Auntie. What relation are you to her? The old woman asked kindly. Elder, I dare not deceive you. We are from the Jin Kingdom. This is my younger brother. The woman in the red trousers is my wife. She was taken by the barbarians a few days ago, and we have come to find her. Mo once said, Alas, damn these barbarians, those wretched barbarians. Right, you've come just in time. Wait a moment. The old woman then turned and walked into the house. After a while, the sound of arguing came from inside, sounding like the old couple was in a dispute. Mo Wan and Lao Wu, waiting outside, exchanged puzzled glances, unsure what the old woman was up to and whether they should go in to mediate. A moment later, the old woman ran out of the house, holding a small cloth bundle, which she thrust into Mo Wen's hands. I found this under the bed. It must be your wife's. I'll return it to you. Mo Wen opened the bundle suspiciously and found a hairpin inside. The moment he saw it, he felt a surge of tears. This was the very hairpin that had been fixed in Lin Ruochen's hairpin bun to hold the red silk veil on that day. As Mo Wen was overcome with grief, a short, stout old man walked out of the house holding a broom used for sweeping the bed and shouted loudly at the old woman. How do you know it's theirs? If I catch you, I'll beat you to death. Please, sir, do not be angry. This is indeed my wife's item. Today, thanks to Madam returning it, we wish to offer 3 taels of silver as reward. Mo Wen understood why the old man was blaming the old woman. After Mo Wen finished speaking, Lao Wu immediately took out silver from his bosom and handed it over. This left the old man stunned. The hairpin had only a silver flower, the rest was copper, not worth 3 taels of silver at all. The old man naturally wouldn't refuse. 3 taels of silver was a considerable sum for a farming family. The two took leave of the old woman and traveled east under the stars. By now, Mo would no longer hope to find Lin Ruochen at the slave market, for she was very beautiful and would surely be bought quickly once she arrived. He only hoped to find the person who bought her and pay a high price to redeem her. They lingered in the town during the day and journeyed another 80 li under the moonlight. At dawn, Missouri Wan and Lao Wu, covered in frost, saw the slave market the Zhao man had mentioned. Mo Wen had always thought that the so-called human market was just a couple of streets like a marketplace. But when they arrived, he realized that the city named Ongsheng was itself a massive human market, 3 times the size of the town where they had previously gathered information. Apart from merchants running tea houses and inns, there were no permanent residents in the city, only sellers and buyers who came to trade people. The city was divided into the East City and the West City. The West City was mainly for poor families selling their children. These people were uniformly ragged and gaunt, with no reluctance in their eyes, as they sold their offspring only emptiness and numbness. The children sitting on the street corners with straw tags in their hair showed no attachment to their parents either. Whenever passers-by walked in front of them, they would stare directly at them, their eyes revealing a mix of pity and longing. Mo Wen could understand the helplessness of the parents, how selling their children was actually a way to let them survive, but he could not understand why these children showed no attachment to their parents. Judging by the situation, they seemed eager to be bought by someone else. Mo Wen said to Old Five, who was walking beside him, "That's so they get bought and won't have to starve. You haven't tasted what it's like to be hungry. When people are starving, they'll do anything. These 8 or 9-year-old children can still be bought. The younger ones that can't be sold have to be exchanged with other families." Old Wu said casually, "Swap with whom?" Mo Wen was slightly puzzled. "Swap with other poor people." Old Fifth said, "Why exchange?" Mo Wen was even more puzzled. "If you can't bear to eat your own child, then eat someone else's." Old Fifth said, "Exchanging children to eat." Upon hearing this, Mo Wen was greatly shocked. Before this, he had only heard of barbarians eating people. He never imagined that impoverished Han Chinese would also commit such inhumane acts. The two of them had a small amount of dry rations. At first, Wen did not give alms to the children by the roadside. He knew clearly that once he started, others would swarm around to beg. But after walking not far, he couldn't resist showing kindness and secretly stuffed some food into the hand of one pitiful child. This child was skin and bones, lying sideways by the roadside, weak and breathless. How can there be a father like you in this world? When shouted loudly at the middle-aged man who had snatched the dry rations from his own child's hand. The latter did not answer, quickly devouring the half-piece of flatbread, ignoring the child's small hand reaching toward his mouth while crying. When helplessly gave the child another half-piece of flatbread. The child hurriedly took it, clutching it with both hands and stuffing it into his mouth, his eating manner messy, afraid that his father would snatch it away again. When stared blankly at the father and son. He had previously doubted Old Five's words, but now he believed that when people are extremely hungry, they are really capable of anything. Master, don't look. This kind of thing also happens in the Gene Kingdom. You just haven't been out much on ordinary days, so you don't know. Seeing when standing there in a daze, Old Five reached out and pulled him forward. Let's buy that child. Otherwise, he will starve to death sooner or later. When kept looking back. Can you buy them all? Besides, what would you do with them after buying? Old Five gestured around with his hand. There were no fewer than hundreds of children in the same situation as that child. All one could do was sigh. The scene of the father snatching the child's food lingered in his mind. That was a choice made between life and death, and familial love a wrong choice, a hateful choice. If I were him, I would rather starve to death than snatch food from my own child. Wen said seriously, people are not all the same. Old Five said that he understood the hardships of the poor better than One and was already used to it. In the Western market, they sold not only children, but also adult men and women. The men were mostly in their prime, and these people were priced higher because they could work and farm. Buyers from all over inspected their limbs, and even their teeth, as if selecting livestock. The women were mostly young wives, with their husbands and children behind them. They sold themselves voluntarily in order to give their husbands and children a chance to survive. Here, there was no rule of no physical contact between men and women. Buyers would touch their waists and chests right in front of their husbands and children. At that moment, their husbands would show painful expressions, while their children stared wide-eyed in confusion. These men were all able-bodied. If they worked hard in the fields, why would they worry about supporting their wives and children? How could they have ended up so miserable? Wen looked at Old Five again. They might not have land, but they might have suffered a disaster. They were already barely getting by, and once disaster struck, they had no food. Old Five spoke. Upon hearing this, Wen sighed again. After arriving at the human market, he sighed from time to time. Everything here made him feel so vile. In his eyes, this was not the human world, but a hell filled with betrayal and separation, an underworld devoid of conscience and kindness. Although he was sighing, Wen did not stop. He took Xiao Wu and searched quickly. After searching the entire West City, the two went to the East City. Arriving here, Wen knew he had found the right place. This was a wide open space where Hu soldiers sold the women they had plundered. The Hu were all in military uniforms and armor, not hiding their identities. The captured women sat in rows on the open ground. Among these women, those with beautiful features made up the majority. Compared to the lifeless atmosphere of the West City, there was more resentment here, filled with the cries of women and the shouts of the Hu. The women captured by the Hu in their campaigns were gathered here, numbering over 1,000. Observing the situation, those who did not belong to a single unit occasionally, they would hurl curses at each other. The young Hu spoke Chinese, while the older Hu spoke a language that Wen did not understand. In this area, there were also many Han Chinese buying women. Although the Hu glared angrily, they did not resort to beating them. The buyers were not afraid either, and the Hu gestured while haggling over prices. Seeing this, Wen dared to take Lao Wu and walk over to search for Lin Ruoqing in the crowd. Since they were unsure if Lin Ruoqing was still wearing red trousers, the two could only examine each woman's face one by one. Most of the women had their heads lowered, so the two bent down and looked sideways, searching slowly. Though these women were beautiful, they were all without exception disheveled. While searching, Wen thought to himself that if he found Lin Ruoqing, he must speak gently and care for her attentively. This matter was not her fault. She had been powerless to resist. Her family had all died, and she had no relatives left. As her husband, he must not despise her. While the two were searching, from time to time, some Hu people shouted curses, blaming them for only looking and not buying. Imowen did not reply and quickly passed by to avoid arguments. They had previously delayed an hour in the West City, and by the time they reached the East City, it was already the hour of Chun at noon. They examined over 1,000 people one by one, but Lin Ruoqing was not among them. Master, why not search again? Seeing Imowen's low spirits, Lao Wu made this suggestion. No need. Imowen slowly shook his head. We searched very carefully earlier, there wouldn't be any oversight. Besides, if Lin Ruoqing were truly in the crowd, she would have spotted us long ago and called out for help. You have done your best. Let's go back. Fifth brother, said the man. Imowen glanced at him, knowing that fifth brother was not in favor of searching for Lin Ruoqing. Let's go to the inn again to inquire. If there's no news of her, we'll head back. Imowen said in a consultative tone. All right, fifth brother nodded in agreement. Imowen turned and headed toward the inn in the city. The inn was vast, the largest building in town, where the sellers and the women to be sold stayed overnight. Entering the inn, Imowen found a corner to sit. There weren't many people in the inn at the moment. A waiter came over to attend to them. The only food available here was porridge, meat, and offal. Remembering that they hadn't had meat for a long time, Imowen ordered 2 bowls of offal soup. Soon the soup was served. Imowen took out copper coins to pay for the meal, giving the waiter 2 extra coins to ask if he had seen a woman in red trousers staying here half a month ago. Imowen hadn't held much hope, given that nearly a month had passed. To his surprise, the waiter had an excellent memory and recalled that some time ago, a Hu colonel had driven a group of women to sell. Among them was indeed a woman in red trousers, but instead of being sold, she was taken back to Yi City in a hired cart. Based on the waiter's description, that woman was most likely Lin Ruoqing. Master, you're not thinking of going to Yi City, are you? Old Five took out a flatbread and handed it to Imowen. Now that there's a lead, I can't just turn a blind eye to it. Imowen took the piece of flatbread. That's the capital of Zhao, filled with Hu people. Lao Uf Thou Win. After we eat, we'll split up. You head back first, I'll go north to find her. Imowen said decisively. I'm following you wherever you go. Knowing Imowen was angry, Lao Wu quickly bowed his head and drank his soup. After lunch, they set off again. On the way, they found an abandoned village. Estimating the time, they could reach it by nightfall. They spent the night in the abandoned village and continued their journey at dawn. Yi City was no less than 2,000 li away. Imowen traveled north with Lao Wu, and within a few days, heavy snow fell again. The two trudged through the snow, moving slowly. Whenever they encountered Hu people on the road, they would keep a wide berth. If they couldn't avoid them in time, they would lower their heads and make way. Since Imowen was cautious along the way, although the two suffered greatly, they encountered no danger. It wasn't until New Year's Eve, as they passed through a forest, that an accident occurred. Several burly men rushed out from the woods and surrounded them. Hand over your valuables, and we'll spare your lives. It was early morning, around the hour of Mao. Imowen never expected to encounter bandits in broad daylight. For a moment, he was stunned by the 5 ferocious-looking men. Lao Wu had never faced such a situation either, but he instinctively stepped in front of Imowen. Hand over your silver quickly, or don't blame my blade for being merciless. The leading bandit shook the steel knife in his hand and shouted at the two. Imowen was startled again, but he quickly noticed that all 5 were dressed as farmers. Only the leader held a steel knife, the other 4 carried farm tools like dung forks and hoes. They were likely nearby farmers forced by hunger to rob on the road. Gentlemen, we 2 brothers are refugees here. Where would we have any silver? If you don't believe us, feel free to search. Imowen reached out and pulled Old Five aside, then said to the leading bandit. At these words, the bandits all frowned. The leader stepped forward with his knife. Seeing this, Imowen quickly grabbed the bundle and handed it over. The bandit took it, untied it, and upon seeing the flatbreads inside, his face lit up with joy. He immediately picked one up and started eating. The other 4 rushed over and grabbed some to eat as well. Imowen saw an opportunity, pulled Old Five, and turned to run. The bandit saw the 2 fleeing and immediately gave chase. Although the 2 ran for their lives, they were gradually caught up by the bandits. Old Five, you go and save yourself. Imowen let go of Old Five's hand. With Old Five's speed, The bandits couldn't catch him. It was he who was holding Old Five back. Young master, I'll hold him off. You run. Old Five's heart warmed at these words. He turned and charged at the pursuing bandits, tackling the one in front of the ground. The other bandits caught up, pulled Old Five away, and surrounded him, beating him severely. Seeing Old Wu in trouble, Imowen did not flee, but instead turned and charged at the thieves. He reached out to grab one of them, but the thief turned and punched Imowen in the face. Imowen saw stars and immediately collapsed to the ground. The two thieves surrounded him, kicking and beating him while shouting curses. Imowen was a young master and a scholar. He had never been in a physical fight since childhood. At this moment, he had no strength to resist, so he could only curl up on the ground and endure the beating. Spare us, sir. We really have no money. If you search us, you'll see. We truly have no money. Old Wu pleaded loudly for mercy. The thieves, feeling they had beaten them enough, stopped and grabbed both men by the arms to search them. To Imowen's surprise, the thieves first searched their boots. The two were like fish on a chopping block, powerless to resist, and could only watch helplessly as the thieves found the gold hidden in the soles of their shoes. Seeing so much gold, the thieves were overjoyed. They grabbed the gold plates and laughed wildly. After laughing, they proceeded to untie the men's hair buns and search for money in their top knots. At this moment, Imowen finally realized that the method he and Old Wu had thought of earlier was not ingenious at all. It had been used so often before them that it was worn out. The thieves were already well aware of the places where travelers hid their gold. You've taken our silver. That's enough. If you harm the lives of us two brothers, the officials will investigate and you won't escape death. Imowen's nose was bleeding heavily at this point, and he kept coughing as he spoke. Don't worry, we won't kill you. The leading bandit laughed loudly, then shouted to the other four. Their clothes are still wearable, strip them off. Imowen hadn't expected the bandits to even covet their clothes. It was the dead of winter. Without clothes, they would soon freeze to death by the roadside. Moreover, Lin Ruochen's hairpin was still in his bosom, a keepsake from the departed, and must not be taken by the thieves. Seeing Imowen clutch his chest tightly, the bandits mistakenly thought he still had silver or gold hidden there, so they all reached out to grab and tear at him. Umitba, stop at once. Just then, a voice called out from afar. Imowen had his back to the newcomer and couldn't see his face, but the Umitba indicated it was a monk, and a young one at that. Mind your own business, you bald donkey. Get lost now. The leading bandit shouted at the newcomer. In broad daylight, you rob people on the road. How could I, a humble monk, stand idly by? The sound from afar approached rapidly. Seeing this, the bandit leader abandoned Imowen, raised a steel knife, and charged south. Moments later, a cry of pain rang out, implying he had suffered under the monk's hands. Go, quickly! The bandit leader shouted to his companions. Hearing this, the bandits slipped into the forest and vanished without a trace. After the bandits fled, Old Five climbed to his feet and came to support Imowen. Imowen, now battered and bruised with blood covering his face, endured the pain and bowed to the young monk who had approached. Thank you, master, for saving us. The travel money we brothers carried has been stolen by the bandits. I beg you, master, to retrieve it for us, otherwise we will have no means to survive. Umitba, they have gone far by now. There is no way to find them. The young monk glanced around, shook his head, and said. Imowen was greatly disheartened upon hearing this, but since this young monk had just saved the two of them, asking for anything else would be pressing his luck and lacking in decorum. Thank you, master. Please tell me your name, so that I, Imo, may burn incense and pay homage to you from afar morning and night in the days to come. Imowen bowed again. Of course, a monk's surname is sure. From the day he leaves home, he has no given name. The monk turned to leave. May I ask where the master is from and where he is headed? Imowen hurriedly asked. Saving his life was a great kindness, and he hoped to have the chance to repay it in the future. I am a bhikkhu from Bodhi Temple, heading to Yunlong Mountain in Minzhou. The young monk replied. May I ask, what is the master going to Yunlong Mountain for? Imowen felt slightly puzzled. Yunlong Mountain was a Shangqing temple, but the monk before him was a Buddhist monk. Why would a monk go to a Taoist temple? During the double jia assembly, Shangqing himself will appear. I am going to listen to the sutras. The young monk put his palms together and spoke. You are a Buddhist disciple. How can you go to listen to Shangqing's sermon? and Mo Wen's feet were cold, and his whole body shivered. Shangqing is the supreme immortal of the three pure ones, worshipped by 1,000 Buddhas and hailed by 10,000 immortals. Although Buddhist teachings were passed down from the Buddha, the mystical methods and ritual ceremonies in fact originated from Taoism. I go to listen to the sutras in order to learn from the sidelines and cultivate great accomplishment. After saying this, the young monk turned and left. And Mo Wen was greatly surprised upon hearing this. He had not known any of this before, but upon reflection, it made sense. First, this monk would not slander his own sect. Second, at this time, rituals were mainly presided over by Taoists. Monks rarely performed them. Moreover, Taoists and monks sometimes conducted joint ceremonies, so it was not unusual for a monk to go to Mount Wuliang to listen to the scriptures. "Master, please sit down quickly." Old Five saw the monk leave, hastily helped Mo Wen sit down, and took off his own linen garment to wrap Mo Wen's feet. Both of their shoes had been taken by the thieves, and now they were both barefoot.